Well, Dan and Jen, Choctaw Tribal Police actually using a chainsaw to cut down branches from a tree behind me where a man has been hiding for several hours. Now, earlier this morning, this man was pulled over by police, and after he stopped, he jumped out of his car, running through a field, going to a pond, jumping in, swimming across to the marsh area. Rescue crews trying to corral him in, but they couldn't get to him. He got to the marsh area and climbed up a tree, and that's where he's been hiding for several hours now. Now, the Durant Fire Department and EMS, along with Choctaw Tribal Police, are on scene. Protesters marched to this intersection at California and Dixon and cut across diagonally to here, intentionally blocking a roadway, a Class B misdemeanor, punishable with up to 180 days in jail and up to a $2,000 fine. Now, around 5:20 is when a store clerk came out. They knocked on the window, realized a man was dead in the passenger seat of the car, and called 911. Well, Chrissy, the family of David Trammell all gave their emotional testimony in the court today, telling Sean Michael Baumgartner to his face how much pain he's caused their family. Connie Adams was inside her home when she heard 10 shots ring out after being fired at two teens standing right here. When she came outside, one had been shot and was screaming in pain. Clayton Walker will spend the next 6 years in prison for a DWI crash that left Shelly Howard in a wheelchair. Curtin County Sheriff Kevin Clarity tells me 20-year-old Wendell Alexander shot a man multiple times in the abdomen in this yellow house you see behind me. The pilot of this helicopter that crashed in this field behind me is fine. The cause of the crash being called a rotor failure with the propellers. Now, it's unclear right now how many people were on board the helicopter in addition to the pilot. Now, this was one of those concrete spikes that was all over Highway 78 yesterday. Now, when it goes in, it cuts what's called the steel belt of the tire. Now, that's the inner lining that keeps the tire together. And when that happens, the tire is beyond repair. Now, TxDOT is adding main lanes to the highway, expanding those frontage roads, and just as they are here, even adding U-turns to these intersections. Now, drivers I spoke with today said some of their biggest frustrations are the constant opening and closures of those exit ramps that we were talking about, but TxDOT says get used to it because that construction is going to last for at least the next 8 months. Former city council member told us that this type of corruption is exactly the reason that she got out of the city government to begin with. There is no question that there's an increased risk for crashes when this winter weather rolls through. According to AAA, around 46% of crashes involve some kind of inclement weather, but there's also a risk of breaking down, and AAA says that dead battery calls are one of the most common that they get during winter weather scenarios. So one of the best things you can do is having a plan if the worst should happen. Nina OHP tells me this woman was one of 4 that went out jug lining near the Fob Bottom campgrounds around midnight last night. All 4 got in the water. She was the one that didn't resurface. Now, everyone I talked to was in favor of more housing coming to Sherman. That wasn't a problem, just not in that area. Now, as you can see, there are probably about dozens of people here at this meeting to learn more about this development, but no plans are final at this time. The city hopes this plaque stands as a reminder of what was lost and how far we've come since that day. The scene was actually just cleared and traffic kind of back to a standstill already, but what happened was a red car stopped abruptly in the middle of the highway, and that caused a 7-car chain reaction crash that shut down the highway.
News 12's Mike Rogers spoke with his daughter about that day. Mike, what happened?
Jen, Jeffrey Walter's daughter, April Hill, says she saw the whole thing. She says Jeff was on the couch with his 12-year-old step-granddaughter. Hill saw him poke the 12-year-old, rubbing up and down her legs, moving his hands closer to her buttocks. The girl told him to stop and tried to move away, but Hill says Walters didn't. After a few minutes, he turned around and saw his daughter had been standing there the entire time. She says Walters went to his car, his daughter locked the doors, and asked her stepdaughter if Walters was making her uncomfortable and if he'd ever touched her like that before. To both, she answered yes.
She looked very uncomfortable, and he didn't stop.
April Hill says her father, 52-year-old Jeffrey Walters, inappropriately touched her 12-year-old stepdaughter, his granddaughter, when he visited the family last year.
And he was like rubbing on her thigh and up closer to her butt area, and it was, and I was froze out of fear.
The 12-year-old tried to get away.
Poking at her, touching her legs. She was very uncomfortable. She was like saying no, stop, and then she was trying to slouch away from him.
Walters went out to his car, and Hill brought her stepdaughter to another room. The 12-year-old told her this wasn't the first time Walters had touched her.
I thank God that he didn't come any closer, because I was already in a overprotective mode.
Hill told her husband what she saw. So Cody Hill slept with his girls in his youngest daughter's room that night.
Just trying to protect my children, and when I saw his shadow approach, it stopped because he saw my silhouette.
That he was in her bed where she should have been.
Last month, Walters was indicted by a federal grand jury for receipt of child pornography.
I read it, and I screamed to Cody they finally freaking got him.
The Grayson County Sheriff's Office and the Department of Homeland Security searched the former Sherman Middle School math teacher's personal laptop and found he received child pornography through the internet on multiple occasions.
He's a teacher over her age group, her grade. We'd already said, this is it, we will never see him again.
Hill says they reported Walters to local police after the incident at their house and later learned Walters touched their daughter another time over her clothes.
Keep our children, still innocent and we not have to know any of this stuff. We just said he broke a promise, broke our trust, and now he's no longer part of our lives.
Police in Corinth, a city in Denton County, took a report and issued him a ticket. Walters was issued a Class C misdemeanor citation for assault by contact after inappropriately touching his step-granddaughter, but was given deferred adjudication, so his record remained clear. Hill says investigators told her Walters refused to answer questions about the incident and would only face a minor assault charge if they wanted to go ahead with charging him. She says investigators asked the family if they really wanted to ruin Walters' life. Sherman ISD was never notified about that incident by the Corinth Police Department, so Walters remained employed by Sherman ISD. Walters was indicted on federal child pornography charges in September, and if convicted, faces up to 20 years in prison. He was released on conditions following his arrest and is due back in court in January. Live in the studio, Mike Rogers, News 12.
News 12's Mike Rogers spoke with the family of the man he killed back in October of 2019, who were in the courtroom when the judge handed down not one, but 2 life sentences without parole. Mike Rogers joins us now live in the studio. Mike, what did that moment mean to them?
Jen Verna Trammell says she was up all night looking at her phone, praying it wouldn't ring like it did the night of October 28th when Sean Michael Baumgartner escaped from the Johnston County Jail the day before his first sentencing date. With her daughters, niece, their boyfriends, and husbands by her side in the courtroom, Trammell told me hearing the judge say Baumgartner would spend the rest of his life in prison felt like the weight of the world being lifted off her shoulders. It's the 10-foot walk 33-year-old Sean Michael Baumgartner escaped once before.
It's a whole new day.
David Trammell's wife, Verna Trammell, was in court Thursday with her family by her side, one by one giving their statements before the judge and Baumgartner, reminding him of the man he took from their lives.
I told him, I said, I hope you wake up every day and see our faces and think of what you did. But you can't because you never saw David. His pickup crushed him.
In October of 2020, Trammell and her husband were just 4 miles away from home, coming back from delivering medicine to a nursing home when Baumgartner, high on meth, being chased by the police, crashed his pickup into the driver's side of their car at 80 miles per hour, killing 71-year-old David Trammell.
It's like the weight of the world's gone.
Baumgartner escaped from the Johnston County Jail October 28th, the day he was originally supposed to be sentenced for Trammell's murder. After a 2-day manhunt, he was caught 1 day before what would have been David Trammell's 72nd birthday.
It's his miss. You know, the smile everybody misses, his personality. And I just wanted him to know what he had taken away.
In the courtroom, Baumgartner cried, telling the Trammells he accepted the responsibility of his actions and wished he could take back the pain he caused them. Trammell's daughter, Ann, testified and told Baumgartner he nearly killed her mother that night as well. Baumgartner will remain in the Johnston County Jail for the next 10 days before being sent to prison to serve 2 life sentences for murder and escape and 4 years for stealing a vehicle. Live in the studio, Mike Rogers, News 12. Welcome to News 12 at 10. I'm Mike Rogers. The year of 2021 marked a lot of firsts for some Texomans. First time buying a car, first time having a kid, and also first time going through the holidays without a loved one. News 12's Kylie Dedman spoke to a local widow about how she and her family are getting through their first Christmas without their husband and dad. She joins us now live in the studio. Kylie, what is the Waite family doing to get through one last holiday of 2021? Thank you, Kylie. Well, let's talk weather. Temperatures not so cold tonight, a sign of things to come. Chief Meteorologist Steve Lenore is here with what to expect. Steve?
Thanks a lot, Michael.
Thanks, Steve. An appeal for a death row inmate was rejected by an Oklahoma court. A state appeals court rejected Miles Bench's motion for an evidentiary hearing and a stay in his death penalty appeal, arguing that the state did not have jurisdiction in the case because Bench is a Choctaw citizen and the murder he committed took place within the Chickasaw Nation. Bench was sentenced to death for the 2012 murder of 16-year-old Braylee Henry after she bought gas at a convenience store in Velma where Bench worked. Grayson County District Attorney Brett Smith is recusing himself from the petition to remove County Judge Bill Majors from office. Normally under Section 87 of the Texas Government Code, the DA represents the state in the removal of an officer. But according to a document signed by Brett Smith, he's asking for another attorney to fill in because of a conflict of interest. Instead, Hunt County Attorney Calvin Grogan will serve a hearing to determine whether a citation will be issued and the case will advance to trial is scheduled for January. A pregnant woman is dead after a crash in Marshall County this afternoon. Oklahoma troopers say a car driven by Casey Cheney of Lebanon went off Highway 32 just before 1 and hit several boulders before landing upside down in a creek about 5 miles west of Kingston. The 29-year-old was 5.5 months pregnant. Troopers are still investigating what led up to the crash. And a woman was injured in a rollover crash in Pittsburgh County this morning. OHP troopers say Jennifer Smith was headed north on State Highway 113 when she went off the road and hit a driveway. That sent her SUV into the air and caused it to roll over before coming to a rest on its wheels. Smith was flown to St. John's in Tulsa and is in stable condition. With head and internal injuries, troopers say she was not wearing a seatbelt. Many southern Oklahoma residents are expressing growing concerns about their local railroads. County Commissioner Ron Boyer says there's 2 major tracks running through southern Oklahoma, including one that runs east to west and it happens to be a switch track where trains stop to decouple, splitting the area in half and putting drivers at a standstill so it can back up traffic, making it more difficult for emergency vehicles to get through. And he adds, not all tracks are well equipped with lights, rail arms, and clear markings. So, as the population in the area grows, so do the problems. If you have any suggestions about how Oklahoma can make their railroads better, you can contact both Commissioner Ron Boyer and the Department of Transportation. There will be a link on this story at KXII.com about how to get in touch with them. Officers in one Texoma community honoring those who died in the line of duty, what those fallen officers remind them every day. And here's a look at our almanac. Temperatures already well above average today, and it will be getting a lot warmer. Steve's got a Christmas Eve forecast that might make Santa go for a red t-shirt. He's got the crazy numbers ahead.